let me tell you, there's a lot of billionaires out there that have no idea what they're talking about. So to me, it's about the reason that I was able to get to where I was, I think career and finance wise, was not in spite of, but because of the fact that I did make sure that I was firing on all cylinders with my relationships and my physical health and my mindset, my emotional health, and giving back, and taking all those things into consideration is what helped me to build the momentum.
Welcome to the Susan Sly Project, where entrepreneurs rule, startups launch, and the side hustle becomes the main hustle. Ladies and gentlemen, your host, Susan Sly.
All right. Well, hey, everyone, wherever you are in the world, I hope you're doing amazing. This podcast is now in over 102 countries. So, much love to all of you. I have a question for you. Do you feel that you are living in balance? Do you feel, maybe another question, that you can actually take a deep breath? Okay, next question. You know me, everyone, I can't just ask one. So my third question is, are you waking up every morning feeling passionate and fulfilled? Because if you answered no to any of those things, then whatever it is you're doing, running on the treadmill, driving in your car, trying to multitask, friends, I need you to get present, because my guest today is a man after my own heart. Check this out. He's the founder of the Momentum Movement, and he is a dynamic speaker. He's an entrepreneur. He's a life coach and a happiness expert. And you may be saying, well, Susan, you've had coaches on before. Not someone who exited their startup from 9 figures and could be doing anything they want, but has made it his life's work to empower other founders and business owners and people working in our startup crazy world to actually live a balanced life. I predict he's going to save lives. And he's all about the 5 core areas of our life: mindset, career, finances, relationships, physical health, emotional health, and giving back. And so with that, my guest today is William Moore. William, thanks for being here.
Wow, thank you, Susan. I've had a lot of intros in my day. That was very special. Thank you. That made me feel warm and tingly inside.
Well, thank you. And since you live in Chicago, you can use all the warm and tingly.
That's exactly right. I'm looking out my window as we speak, and it is snowing yet again. It's 6 degrees yet again. We've been going through a nasty spell, so kudos to you for being warm.
Yeah, I fired winter. I just said in 2014, I have to live where boots are a fashion statement, not a necessity. And, and kudos to, there are people who listen to the show in places like Edmonton, Alberta, where it's minus 47 degrees Celsius, and God bless them, right? It's
Hey, that's exactly right. It's all about acclimating. I moved from Florida. I was actually in Florida, so I was with you for a good period of my life 5 years ago. And you think I would have acclimated by now, but no, not having acclimated.
So I want to ask you something, and I know that perception and perspective is massive for you, and really about your success and everything I've read about you. There are many people out there who have startup dreams. And they may have a dream to take a business and to get to 7 figures, or they may have a dream to get to 8 figures, or maybe 9 figures. And it sounds all lovely and well, but the reality is most people can't handle staying with one thing even a couple of weeks, let alone as long as it takes. So I want to jump in. My first question for you is, what do you think makes a successful founder?
So that's a loaded question. The word success is I'd like to start with. It's a loaded question for me. So, I always put it in quotes. Part of what I'm trying to do is redefine the definition of what success means. And, there's certain people that use it differently, and there's not really one universal definition. I feel like that everybody's like, this is what it means. I think most people tend to connect it with financial, career, fame, that type of thing, which to me is what it's one of your career, and finances is one of your core. So it's not like I'm one of those guys. It's like, if you're looking to make money and you're you're going the wrong way. No, that's part, as you mentioned in the beginning of the show, of a well-balanced, well-rounded life. But true success to me is what I call firing on all cylinders in all 5 cores. entrepreneurs, finding that balance within your mindset, within your career and your finances, your relationships, your physical health, and your emotional health, and giving back. And it took me a lifetime to figure these things out. I was suicidal when I was actually in college, my freshman year of college. I had a very difficult childhood. My mom was abusive alcoholic, verbally and physically, and my dad moved away when we were younger, and we moved around a lot. And so I got to the point where I was just like ready to give up. And I serendipitously discovered a book my freshman year of college, and it just switched my thinking just enough to where I was like, okay, I'm going to reinvent myself. I'm not going to kill myself. I'm going to reinvent myself. And that just became like my life's mission. So 25 years later, I was able to do that success, build the typical business that a lot of people would say, oh, he's successful. And ironically, I'm using that to get in the side door to tell people about what success really is about. Because now I have the credibility, right? It's like, oh, well, he must know what he's talking about. He did. But let me tell you, there's a lot of billionaires out there that have no idea what they're talking about. So to me, it's about the reason that I was able to get to where I was, I think career and finance wise, was not in spite of, but because of the fact that I did make sure that I was firing on all cylinders with my relationships and my physical health and my mindset, my emotional health, and giving back, and taking all those things into consideration is what helped me to build the momentum.
What was the book you read?
How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie.
Dale Carnegie. Okay.
Still holds up today. I mean, that thing was written like 80 years ago. And I mean, it still holds up as you could have thought that it was written yesterday. Now, of course, it's got more modern references. It's no longer, I went to school on a horse and buggy the other day. It's, so they do that for people so that they don't feel like, oh, this is too old school. But the whole point of the fact that I read it back then and it resonated with me, and it's still, I've read it like 10 times since. I could read it tomorrow and it would be the same thing, is it's filled with universal principles. And to me, that's what life is about. And that within each core area, there's these universal principles that have been around since the beginning of time. They're going to be around till we destroy ourselves, right? Or till the end. And you can't cheat the system. You can't try to work around them. Things like, just for instance, the golden rule, do unto others, right? Like that'll eventually come to bite you in the ass if you lie, cheat, steal your way through life and just try to take advantage of everybody. You might get, in the short run, you might get ahead, but it'll eventually come back to get you. So within each of these cores are these principles. And How to Win Friends and Influence People, if for those that haven't read it, the basic principle in that is just make other people feel special, get the focus off of you, put it on them, make them feel special, ask them about themselves, and you will never have any problems in your relationship, whether it's with your significant other, whether it's with your friends, whether it's with your colleagues, acquaintances, potential future partners. People inherently want to feel special. Remember little things like remembering their name, where their kids go to school. No, most people don't take the time to do that because they're focusing on themselves, right? It's all about them. But the ones that do, it's like night and day, and you can see it work. Like, just take my word for it. If you're not familiar with this principle, go out tomorrow and just really put the focus on the other person. And at first it was hard for me to do that because I was so in my own head and I was your typical victim and it was all about me and poor me, poor me. And I think a lot of people kind of have that sort of attitude. What about me? When am I going to hit the lottery? When am I going to get 1 million followers on Facebook like that guy? He didn't do anything good, right? And then I kind of had to fake it till I made it, so to speak, and that I feigned interest in these people because I was like not genuinely interested. I was still too into my own head. But what ended up happening was I legitimately became interested in them because what happened is there was a reciprocal interest back to me. And then it became like this energy of us both feeding off of each other and the synergy, again, no matter whether it was a friend, whether it was somebody I was dating. And it totally changed my life in terms of relationships, which is one of the 5 cores and one of the main reasons that people are able to build momentum in their life.
William, that's beautiful. And it's interesting you mentioned about your mom. So my mom, all the listeners and viewers know, my mom was an alcoholic and an addict. And growing up, when you have a parent who is an addict, you learn to become second to an addiction. So it's so interesting that you said that it felt disingenuous to you. initially. This, I'm going to add value to someone. I'm going to make them feel special, because if you've not been on the receiving end of that, then you have to learn it. And my son, who's in college right now, he's a freshman, he listens to every show. And I love that you brought that up, because I think there are a lot of young people, I know for a fact, in Gen Z that are really struggling right now, because life has been about, to your point, how many likes do I have? How many followers do I have? What's my engagement that I have? And all of those things it's like building your house on the rock versus the sand. That's building your house on the sand. That's not real at the end of the day. What's real are relationships. I want to ask you, you build this company, this food delivery company, right? You build this thing and you have a 9-figure exit, which is unicorn territory, right? And if, someone's listening in a different country, we're talking north of 100 million US dollars essentially for this thing. When was the moment you realized in that process that you were grossly out of balance? Because only someone who gets very out of balance could say, I'm going to spend the rest of my life and career and my legacy teaching other people to get into balance.
Interesting. I've never been asked it quite that way. And I can honestly say that that's a good question. Had somebody asked me differently, I might not have said that I was out of balance, but I will say this: towards those last 2 years of the business in trying to exit. And so, by the way, I didn't just get that we sold for 320 million. I didn't get that in my pocket. I had partners. We partnered with another company. We raised money. So, at the end of the day, yes, I never have to work again, technically, and I've chosen to do this. But those last 2 years were definitely, I felt like I was 99% in the business, and it was like an anchor on my shoulder to where I no longer enjoyed it, right? Part of growing a business, being an entrepreneur, you got to have that desire backed by faith. You got to have that this gets me excited in my soul, and there's nothing that's going to stop me. I know that this is going to work. And unless you've had it, it's hard to describe. But when you have it, it's what helps drive you. It's what helps keep you persistent. It's hard to be persistent when you hit a roadblock and you're kind of not really that into something. And you're like, okay, I don't really need to push through that. But when you're like, I'm going to do this. I think it was Napoleon Hill coined that phrase, desire backed by faith. There's a lot of different ways. And by the way, these universal principles that I talk about, what I love about it is there's always like so many different ways to say the same thing, but at the end of the day, it all comes down to the root principle. And this particular principle is, if you're, when you're setting goals, when you're deciding what it is, if you want to go out on your own, you have to make sure that it's something that ties into your strengths, your passions, and that you have this like just unbelievable desire to succeed. And in your soul, you're going to. Anyways, so I got to the point where, for the first 7-8 years, yes. Last 2 years, I just wanted out. I was tired of fighting with some of my partners wanted to do one thing. I said, look, guys, we got to sell. They're like, no, let's just ride this out. And I was like, guys, you got Uber Eats. I mean, we started before Uber, before DoorDash, before Grubhub, any of these guys, right? And we bootstrapped it. We did it with our own money. And so we were actually making a profit. Then all of a sudden, these companies come around with billions of dollars, losing money hand over fist to gain market share. And I saw the writing on the wall and was like, we can't compete with that. They're like, well, no, but they don't have the uniforms and they don't have the double thick insulated bags. I'm like, guys, it doesn't matter. Like, Uber has a zillion drivers on the street. The drivers are our biggest problem. Like, we never can balance the drivers enough. And now Uber's just got this field ready to take orders. And I was like, we can't. So bottom line, it was a tough journey. And so when I finally finished and we finally got the deal and it was signed, and I was like, oh, like this huge anchor was just taken off my back. And I was like, oh my God, I can breathe again. Right. And I enjoyed that moment for, I'd say 2 to 4 weeks, where I just did all the things that I hadn't been doing. I played golf. I spent more time with my newborn son. I, did all these things where I'm like, we just recently moved to Chicago. So I was exploring the city, but then very quickly it was, okay, now what? And that's when it hit me that what I already kind of knew in the back of my mind, because I've been, building my principles and my goals and all this stuff over the years, and kind of knowing that money is, I knew money wasn't the end all be all. I knew it was going to feel good, but I didn't know that it was going to go right that quickly. And then it was going to be like, now what? And that's when it hit me that life is all about the continual journey, growing, like having goals, reaching them, and then setting new goals and reaching those. And so that's when I said, you know what do I want to do with the rest of my life? Financially, I'm secure, but okay, that doesn't make me happy. I mean, yeah, it's nice. It's one of the cores. It's nice to have that. I don't know where my next meal is coming from, but it incrementally, whether I have 15 million or whether I have 100 million, that's not going to make me more happy. And what's sad is a lot of people, like you were saying, Gen Zers in particular, it's because every single generation it gets worse and worse, where it's more and more about the money, the fame, the likes, and when you focus on that stuff, not only do you end up neglecting all your other cores and you're becoming less happy. There's a reason teen suicide's at an all-time high. But then when you do, if you're able to somehow reach it, then you're not going to be happy anyways.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that really that piece about it wasn't fun anymore and you were arguing with the partners. And I want to say to, people who aren't in the startup world, we have a lot of people who are solopreneurs who listen to the show, that when you hear about these big exits, yeah, William did not get 325 million, right? And the way the whole thing shakes out, they can be multi-year deals, your equity dilutes every time you do a raise. But at the end of the day, there is that light at the end of the tunnel where you go, someday we're going to exit, or someday we'll IPO and I'll step back, or whatever the case is. What would you say to someone who's really stressed out right now? They don't see an exit for themselves. They're overwhelmed. They have maybe that anxiety you were talking about that you had when you were in college. What would you say to them?
So, and are you referring to if maybe their heart's not all in the business, or they're just
not all in? Maybe they're a solopreneur. Maybe there is no, I can sell this thing, right?
I mean, pivot, because there's nothing worse than, so an exercise I do with people is I say, let's go ahead and flash forward to the end of your life. And it's like, I called the Back to the Future exercise, one of my favorite 80s movies. I was a kid of the 80s. And it's like, okay, what do you want said at your funeral? And I do it within each of the 5 cores. And it's a really magical thing, because it's like, it forces you to say, okay, how many people are going to be at my funeral? What's going to be said about me? And I have them write it out. And then you kind of backtrack, and then you go back to the present. You go, okay, am I on track to do that? What are the habits I have in each of my cores? What's the path I'm currently on? And so for instance, in the career and finance, one of the things, I'll look at my funeral list right now. I have it up on my vision board. It's, he combined his strengths and his passions to create a career that he loved so much that whenever he woke up, he never considered it work. So that's the very first one. I have about 6 of them on there. But is what you're doing right now in line with that, right? And it's like, if the answer is no, what are you doing? Because you're just, time is the most precious commodity that you could possibly have. And every second you're doing something that you aren't excited about. And I'm not saying just chuck the business. Like, maybe there's a way to pivot that business and to get excited about it. But if you're not excited about it at the core, like I said, if you don't have that desire backed by faith, you got to switch gears.
That's powerful.
It's a brutal truth, but I'm going to give it to you, because, you could say, well, just tweak your business plan, or no, you got it. We're going back to the fundamentals. We're going back to what's in here. And if that's not clicking, then you got to switch. And the good news is, though, you still have time. And even if you have a regular job, I always tell people the side hustle, that's how I did it. You got to pay the bills. But if you're really that motivated and you're that excited about it, you're going to want to work on it at night. And you're going to wake up in the middle of the night and have, like I do all the time, and have an idea and put it in your phone. And you're going to get up first thing thinking about it. That's where you want to be. And if you're not in that space, you got to rethink it.
Yeah, it's this concept of what's lighting your soul on fire, right? And if one of the things I've always said, if you can't find something in your business that lights your soul on fire, it doesn't have to be the same thing every day. Let's, talk about that for a moment, because one day, you mentioned your partners, they were excited about insulated bags, right? In Radius, our startup, there's a project we're working on, and for two of the founders, it's their zone of genius. And they're so excited about this. And they're working with our robotics lab partner at ASU, and they're doing all this cool stuff. And I have another aspect of the company that is my zone of genius, and it lights my soul on fire. So let's talk about that, because you have the 5 cores, and there's this misperception out there. I found, I spent a lot of years doing executive coaching that where I was coaching as a certified coach, but before I went back into this crazy startup world, which is like my full-time 6th child, but there's this concept that, oh, I have to have the same life purpose in all areas of my life. It can only be one. Can you talk about that? Because I think your work with the 5 cores is so brilliant, and how you delineate it for people.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, so you have goals in each of your cores. Again, that funeral exercise where it's like, okay, well, what do I want said about me? I've got them all right here. What do I want said about my physical health? What do I want said about my emotional health, my giving back, my legacy, right? The 5th core. Is the world going to say, you know what? Thank God he's gone. He sucked every last bit of life out of us, and boom, hit the road, Jack? Or is it going to say, man, we're really sorry he's gone. He left a really awesome mark, or she left an amazing, indelible legacy that is now helping the world build positive momentum. So these are the types of things. And it's like, for your physical health, like for me, I'm never going to, we all age, right? And for a while I was struggling with it. I'm like, God, I'm getting older. I don't like it. And then it was like, well, as long as I can look as the best that I can for me and for my age. And at my funeral, what I once said, I'm gonna give you this one too. He was Peter Pan. His appearance and energy levels were in line with somebody much younger than him. So it's like, I don't want to be that old, like barely, so I'm constantly moving. I'm keeping it going. And mind, body, as we all know, are connected. So the more I move my body, the more my mind is stimulated, and then they feed off of each other. And so I'm not a crazy workout person, by the way, but I proactively schedule into my life exercise and fitness and eating, making sure, and again, it all just comes down to habits. Habits don't care if they're good or bad, helping or hurting us. They're going to do their thing over time, no matter what. So if you've got good habits that are helping you build that momentum, taking you to that ideal funeral list, then your brain's going to be on autopilot helping you, versus hurting you if it's doing the opposite. And it's just so easy. That's the problem. It's so easy to not work out. It's so easy to eat the cookies and the ice cream at midnight when you go for a snack, but you get in the habit, and then it doesn't seem like work. It's a front-loaded thing to undo the bad habit, but once you get it going, you got it.
Yeah, it's powerful, because I've known a few friends who've actually died pursuing their dreams. My best friend died at 47. He was building a startup, and it was always like, I'll have lunch with my kids when I exit. I'll do this when I exit. And he ended up getting diagnosed with stage 4 cancer and being given a death sentence of 90 days to live. He actually lived for a year and a half. And I remember him saying a few things. One was, when he told me he had cancer, he said, Susan, I've cut my friend list down to 5 people, and I don't want sympathy. His name was Ken. And he's like, I don't want sympathy. And you're on that list, so don't give me any sympathy. I'm like, I'm not giving you sympathy, Ken. But toward the end of his life, I remember one conversation, William, where he called me and he said, promise me, you will never make the pursuit of money and things more important than what's really important. And in my next book, when I write that, there's going to be a lot of that aspect in it. I want to ask you just a couple quick more questions. You wrote about failure habits, and the truth is, and as you've said, it's the result. Our results are the result of our habits. And before we were doing the show, we were talking about, I was sharing, I get up at around 4:30 in the morning. I spend an hour praying and meditating. I don't look at emails. My phone is in a whole other room at night. It's not beside my head. I work out. I get ready for the day. Then I look at all that stuff. I don't do it before. And that's
great morning routine.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a success habit, right? And I'm almost 50, and I want to be like Benjamin Button. Like, I'm just going to be like, when I'm in my 50s, my husband's going to get arrested because everyone's going to think I'm so young. That's my goal. But
there you go. I love it. I'm Peter Pan. You're Benjamin Button. It just makes sense. Yeah, I love it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you can bail Chris out when he gets arrested. He looks pretty good though. He listens to the show too. So I have to be careful. I had John Lee Dumas on the show and we were talking about Puerto Rico as a tax haven. And my husband comes in my office. He's like, I'm a CPA. I know it's a tax haven. I said, honey, I know, it's okay. So anyway, disclaimer, my husband looks really good, but there are people listening right now who maybe have some habits, William, that they don't know are sabotaging them. Rapid fire, could you share what are some of the top failure habits that people have?
So yeah, I mean, negative self-talk, so the first core is your mindset. And I didn't give definitions for them. You can go to my website. I won't define each one, but the gist of the mindset, which to me is the most important core, it's basically getting your mind working for instead of against you. It's your attitude, it's your perception, it's your confidence, it's how you see the world, for lack of a better term, the glass half full, half empty. And that makes a difference. I know that's a cliche old term, but that's a principle, perception in terms of like, if you're able to look at the world in an optimistic, brighter way and say, okay, I've got these strengths, I've got these passions, I've got some weaknesses just like everybody else does. I'm going to figure out how to work around those weaknesses, to outsource them, to proactively not schedule them into my everyday life, right? So, but you got to know what those are. And so to me, it's the awareness side is just so huge. And everything I do, everything is just take a big old spotlight and just shine it in those nooks and crannies. Because people, even if you think, in general, it's like people are like, oh yeah, no, I know I should eat better. I know I should, but you have no idea when you actually break it down and you start looking. And it's one of the things I like to do with people is sort of say, okay, let's really take a hard look and let's make a list of each core and the habits you have. And so, negative as far as the mindset, negative self-talk is one of the biggest ones. There's a statistic in general, and I refer to, in mindset, there's two types of people. There's what I call a fixed victim, and there's a growth owner. And the fixed victim is that, poor me, my brain is broken, life sucks. Basically, like I was in college, in my freshman year of college. Like you get to a point, no matter how you got there, and maybe it wasn't even your fault. Like I had a tough childhood, moved around a lot, and I had bad role models, whatever. But it is what it is. If you're there, you're there. And then it's like, okay, how do you pivot? How do you switch? And you can't just read a book for $6.99 that guy says, click here. And it's a process, and it's slow. And it starts with starting to catching yourself in the act, becoming aware, like I said, of the thoughts that you're having. Like, is this thought helping me build momentum? Or is it, as cheesy as it sounds, and whatever works for you, that's what I use in my brain. Like, is this putting me on? I think of it as a ladder. I literally think of life as, is this helping me go up my success ladder? Or is this habit taking me down my failure ladder? And just getting into that state where you start to catch yourself is everything, especially when okay, I have everything within me to kick ass. I'm a growth owner. I have everything within me to kick ass, take names. Every failure, I'm going to fail forward. I'm going to make mistakes, but every step I'm going to become bigger, better, faster, stronger, smarter. Obstacles are temporary roadblocks, and I'm going to get around, and I'm going to set my goals, and I'm going to hit them. Like, if you have that attitude, then when you fail, I'm not saying it's going to feel good. Like, woohoo, I failed, I learned. That's not how it works. It's going to be more like how quickly you get back up and go, okay, that stung a little bit, but what did I learn from that? How can I grow and become better from that? And that's everything. That's everything. And when you get that, all the other cores become incrementally easier, and they all work as a ripple effect. I call it, like I said, firing on all cylinders. You start to fire on one, you get your mindset going. It becomes easier to want to get into shape, to get your physical health going. It becomes easier to start taking the focus off of you, having better relationships, actually genuinely, proactively doing things for other people, making them feel special. And then you see how much it comes back your way. Like, all these things just start becoming magically easier and better if you're able to just, again, catch yourself at the top when you're starting to take these actions and have those thoughts and start to replace them.
Beautiful. Like one of the things I'm getting from this, our discussion today is writing, your funeral for all of your 5 core areas, and just to review: your mindset, career and finances, relationships, physical health, emotional health, and giving back. And maybe someone watching or listening is strong in some of those, but the other ones need a little work. And it's an exercise I'm going to do. When I created the life pyramid, this concept, a pyramid can't balance on its tip, right? And for years, I was so out of balance. I was, at times in my life, very focused on health. I was a pro athlete until I got diagnosed with MS. God has a sense of humor. And then, at times in my life, it's been about career, but this whole concept of really knowing what your legacy is in all of the core areas, it's powerful and beautiful, and working on your mindset. So my final question for you, and I want everyone to connect. Your website is more, MOORE, momentum.com, or at 5Core Life on IG. And I want, after you listen to the show, tag William and I with your takeaways. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm the one who responds, not one of my team. It's me who's responding to you on YouTube. So put your comments there. So I want to ask you this, I always ask my guests, what does a day in your life look like? But I'm going to ask you something a little different, because our whole goal with the show is to help people lead a more balanced life, become more productive. What did your day look like those last 2 years? And this is a question that's probably just for me. Honestly, I want to know those last 2 years, and what does it look like now?
Oh, so I'm so much happier now. I have this little diagram of this, like how your cores, they start to interact with each other, and your little happy meter in the middle starts to fill up with liquid. The more they fill up, the more. And I'm developing this app that I'm super excited to come out within the next couple of months, where it gamifies this whole experience. We didn't even get into any of that, and we're towards the end of the show, so I won't.
When you launch, come back, because we want to get that app to everybody. So
I would love to. 100%. Yeah. And you can go on the website. If you go to the Gamify Your Life tab, click on the app, and you can actually sign up for the beta when it comes out. And there's also, I meant to say, on the site, if you want to see where you currently stand in your 5 cores, there's a little quiz, and you can kind of get the 10,000 foot view of, like, okay, this is my weakest one. I need to get to work on ASAP. Or, this one I got pretty good. I can not prioritize that. But at the end of the day, you're going to want to work in all of them, but you want to start with that one. So yeah, I mean, it's an app, and it's gamifying it, and it's making fun, and so I've gotten to the point where that stress in that last 2 years, it was so high, and you don't realize when you're in it how bad it is until you get out. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it was like, I knew it was tough, and I was pushing through, and I was 13, 14, 15. I was engaged, got married, and my wife was just like, this is nuts. And I was just like, what do you mean? This is how it goes. This is part of my life. And then I got out of it, and I was like, because I was able to balance way more I was able to spend that time more on my physical health, which no matter how much I was proactively trying to get into it, when you're hustling every day just to try to get through the day and survive, and not have one of your franchisees bail on you, and trying to get a deal done, that's the priority. And the other things start falling by the wayside: your relationships, your physical health, your emotional health, which is, your stress. We haven't really talked about that one, but that's more like your stress, and just your whole, am I enjoying life in general? Like, do I know what I'm passionate about? Not work-wise, but like just in life. Like, what are my interests? Like, for me, I like to play golf. I like to play basketball. I like to go hiking. Like, none of those things were even on the radar for those last 2 years, right? It was like, but then it's like, now it's like that I'm proactively scheduling all these things in my life, knowing that I have to have that balance. Oh my God, it's like I can breathe again. And it's just such a better feeling, knowing that I'm in control of my life. I guess that's a good way to put it. I'm the growth owner. I'm no longer the victim. It's sort of like my life's controlling me. And I think for those 2 years, I ended up letting that happen.
So what advice would you give? I know this is another question, but what advice would you now William, give to that William?
I'd say this is temporary, and it's no fun, but you got to push through. I couldn't have redone it any other way. I couldn't have just thrown my hands up and be like, you know what, let's just forget it. Because I'm really glad I pushed through, because it ended up paying off. And, it's allowed me to now have that financial freedom to really focus on what I want to do with life, which is to give back to people that struggled the same way I did, to help the world help people become happier, help the world grow its happiness, heading in the right direction, instead of the world doing this, like 50% of the world hating the other half, which is sad to say. That's, you look in the political arena, that's become a very real statistic, not only in the US, but around the world, but saying, hey guys, look, we're all on the same thing here. We all just want to be happy and live our best lives. Why don't we do this instead? Right.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, it's just so nice to know that, like, that's what I'm doing every day. And I think you mentioned earlier, I didn't get a chance to comment on it. Like, not every day is going to be awesome. There's going to be days you wake up. And so, right, I hate it when people say, oh, you just got to spring out of bed every day. There's days where I'm like, oh, today I got to do this part of it. And it's not going to always be awesome. But in general, what you're doing, what you're working towards, that's what's got to be that. I think you mentioned, I liked your term, fire in your soul has to be lit. And, it can get doused here and there, and you run into a stumble block, and, the flame might go down a little bit, but it'll stay lit. And then when you do have those good moments, when you have those successes, I call it getting into your success loop. Most of us are stuck in our failure loop. Your success loop, you take a little bit of action, you have a little bit of success, your mindset improves, you feel better about things and yourself, and then you have more energy, and then you take a little bit more action, and then you just get into that. Versus the opposite, the failure loop is you don't hardly take any action, or you're complacent, don't do anything, then you feel worse about yourself, then you get less energy, then you take less action, right? Where a lot of us get stuck. And so at the end of the day, it's just keep moving, keep taking action. If something's not working, pivot, grow. Just know, though, where you want to end up, again, with that funeral thing. And I have an ebook too that you can request from me, and it'll actually help you do that funeral list if you want.
I love that you gave all the resources, because I was ready to say, like, your website has some of the best free resources and connection resources I have ever seen. And yeah, just to pick up on what you said, it's also about making the hard decisions, right? The people say to me all the time, I don't know how you do it. Like, you have this company, 5 kids. And, my team knows that I do my best work at 5:30 in the morning while they're all sleeping. So they might send a contract. This is today, true story. There was a contract that some of them had worked on last night after 8:00. My phone was off. Do you know why? Because I was snuggling with my husband on the sofa. That's what I was doing. But they know I'll get to it at 5:30 in the morning. And I think one of the pieces of advice, I still get the hikes in with my friends. I still do the things that at the end of the day, we teach the world how to treat us. And I can't, the words thank you they're not, I guess, profound enough for the work you're doing. Because when I did lose Ken in my life, that was before I started Radius with the team. And if I hadn't lost him, I likely wouldn't have the same perspective, because anything could happen to us. We could die tomorrow, and our regret in our final moments isn't going to be, I wish I'd worked my ass off more. It's going to be, I wish I had gone hiking, or I wish I had gotten on the ground and played Lego with my kids, or whatever the thing is. And in my philosophy, and William is a rare person who aligns with this, we actually can have it all. We can have the Lego and do the startup and get the hike in and get the date night, but it's a choice. Well
said. That's exactly right. It's a choice, and you got to proactively, schedule things into. I always talk about the term reduce friction. Like, you just want to reduce the friction that's preventing you from building momentum. So if it's like what is it in each of these core areas, these habits that you didn't like? Let's say it's the date night. For a while, my wife and I, when we moved to Chicago, we got off of our routine, and all of a sudden 3 months went by, and we're like, and we had a newborn, so it was fairly normal, but that stuff's still important. And we're like, we haven't had a date, and then we're like, why are we? So we just started putting it. We didn't used to put it in our calendars because it was a habit and we didn't need to, but we started proactively putting it into our scheduler, basically every other week, and then it was like, it wasn't even a choice. It was like, okay, yeah, it's date night, here we go. Versus it would have been so easy if had we not done that, maybe 6 months would have gone by, maybe a year would have gone by, right? And then how does that affect the relationship? How does that compound over time? Yeah, I love it. Well, William, there's so many things we can talk about. I definitely want to have you back when the app comes out. I'll sign up for the beta, because Geeky Weird Susan loves all that kind of stuff. And I would encourage everyone to check out moremomentum.com or on IG at 5corelife.com. William, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Susan. This has been awesome. Thanks for having me.
You got it. Well, everyone, listen, William and I, if this has been helpful, we would love for you to share it. We'd love for you to tag us. Make sure you're following me at Susan Sly on Instagram. It's easy to remember. And on iTunes, Spotify, we love a 5-star review, a thumbs up, or a subscribe on YouTube. So YouTube, I can't even speak. I'm so excited. With that, it's been another episode of the Susan Sly Project, and we'll see you next time.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another epic episode of the Susan Sly Project. For more tips, strategies, and ideas, visit www.susansly.com.